Hey, Becca, thanks for coming.
No problem, Justin. My pleasure. Uh,
This is the September 6th and or 7th. Uh, what was the AI UX team call chat discussion? Maybe.
yes. So I have the first and only agenda item, which kind of goes into just a general update too about what's happening with Explain This Vulnerability, the Threat Insights AI feature. So earlier today, our lead backend engineer working on Explain This Vulnerability meant to host a meeting titled Explain This Vulnerability GA security discussion with the internal security team, but accidentally invited the whole company. So this resulted in how many people can fit on a Zoom page, roughly? Like,
I don't know.
because there were
Lot.
3 pages of people. So it's huge. I said 30 plus roles. I didn't mean that. There were at least 50 people on the call.
Wow.
With a range, with roles ranging from customer success to other stages, PMs, engineers, legal, and more, asking questions about the feature. So it was interesting to say the least. And it kind of reminded me of what being in other companies is like, honestly. I think it was like a happy accident, because it really reminded me, like at my last company, being in a room with stakeholders or other people throughout the organization, asking really, really tough questions about like, what is this thing and how do we pitch it and what is the value here and what about the concerns and how are y'all addressing that. I mean, from sales and marketing, and it was really, really interesting. So I linked the agenda for that meeting in the agenda for this meeting. So just to cover like some of the questions that came up there, Roger Wu, he's a senior product manager. My team has for self-managed. So he says, my team is working on GitLab Cloud Connector. How do we intend to facilitate, explain this vulnerable in self-managed instances? One of the key considerations is that self-managed customers are generally closed off and more sensitive. And without going into like all of the answers, the next question, what are the biggest value drivers to this feature? How do we translate this to customers? That question was from a solutions architect. I see the blog has the what, but not really the why. Why should customers care about Explain This Vulnerability? The next question.
You mean the one that was posted a couple days ago, that blog post on how to use it? I thought that mentioned why, shifting left. I thought that was in there.
Yeah.
Maybe they just missed it. I was like towards the end.
I'm not sure which blog post
between setup.
I wish somebody linked the blog posts there. I thought she was referring to one that Alana wrote a few months ago when we used it in experiment. Okay. Has there been another one since?
Yeah, an engineer posted one yesterday or 2 days ago on I think releasing it to beta and how to set it up and how to use it and all that stuff.
Okay. I will post to the one that I think she's referring to. This is from May 2nd.
All right, then I will post the one that could have been referred to as well. I can find it. What's the name of our blog? I'm trying to search my history and explain and blog isn't coming up.
About.gitlab.com/blog. The name of the blog?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to search my.
I mean, there's different categories in the blog. So there's like an AI ML category. So I guess you click on that. I don't know if our blog has a name.
I'll just do it the hard way and scroll through every page. Yeah, I remember that one.
This is what I assumed that that person was speaking about. But I'm curious to see yours. Oh, the first blog post can be seen here. So I guess there's, unless they were referring to that one. GitLab surfaces vulnerabilities that contain relevant information. However, more users aren't sure where to start. It takes time to research and synthesize. So maybe she's just looking for
anyway,
a little bit more. Yeah. Anyway, so there were a lot of really, really valuable questions in here. Are we storing which vulnerabilities are being detected by GitLab? Is there history of any kind? And then like a list of considerations. So my contributions on this meeting was to show everyone that we're going through the steps to validate the quality, validate the UX, that we're not just carelessly releasing these into experiment and beta and GA, that we're doing ongoing research, that we're setting success criteria. So I am very grateful to the AI teams for how fast we've moved in creating these kind of guardrails. I know a lot of it is just up to the teams to set their own success criteria, but I did feel well prepared going into that, because they were very fair questions that people had, especially for roles that are customer facing. Like these are questions that are going to come up, and I want to make sure that they have the answers that they're looking for. So my contribution was to link to the research readout that I recently recorded, where I show some customers speaking about, recording their feedback on the Explain This Vulnerability feature and some of their concerns and some of their hopes. So hopefully people were able to watch that video and it answered some of their questions. I also linked to the dovetail report and the issue, the research issue, so they could dig into it a little bit more. And then I also posted links to the 2 upcoming studies we have for GA, which I can also talk about now. So going into, or looking at going towards GA, there's 2 things that we're talking about doing in the next milestone, which is 16.5.
Yeah,
16.5. So the way that this is shaping out is it's kind of a 2-parter. So Michael Oliver has this issue still in the draft state, should be noted, but solution validation measure the responses provided by Explain This Vulnerability to assess for any positive or negative feedback from the user. So this one is really about measuring the quality of the response. And there's an ongoing discussion down here with Alana. I pointed out that we need to set success criteria for these results because it wasn't really mentioned up until now. Alana says, thank you. When you were talking to customers during your most recent moderated study, was there a percentage of correct responses customers are looking for? So I'm in the middle of crafting this response. But basically, no. I mean,
there was another comment she had where she brought up the 90% thing. I think I saw that a couple days ago.
So she's
there it is. She mentioned it there. That's the one.
She's maybe arbitrarily setting this, well, not
Right.
arbitrarily, when I brought this up with internal security engineers, and I think this was probably the goal of the meeting that Gregory intended to have today with the security team. But when I spoke with them, I was hearing I would expect at least, 90% accuracy. So I think she's targeting 85 to 90%. So then during our AI sync, we have a weekly AI security sync that happens before this meeting. So there was a discussion about how exactly do we measure this. And I pinged Michael Oliver afterwards, and he is thinking a scale of 1 to 10 where it's most useful, or a Likert scale question, like how useful was this to you? He says, personally, I would lean towards the 1 through 10 scale because it's a little easier to measure statistically. We can say we want less than 5 to 10% of participants to score 1.3 and at least 50%. This is where this is not my strength, the quantitative side. I don't know how this 1 through
It's
10
his though.
translates to the 85% here.
Yeah.
But yes,
He's a data analyst type of person, so he
right,
loves
exactly. So we
quantitative
were very
stuff.
lucky to have him as part of this.
Yeah.
So this is an ongoing conversation. If anyone that watches this, or you, Justin, want to follow along or chime in, that's this side of it. That's the measuring the quality of the
Can
response.
can you can you CC Katie on your response, because she has a goal to also figure out how to put together a consistent methodology that everyone can use. And
Yeah,
she was going to round up everyone that's working in AI to start to have that discussion, but
yeah, yeah.
can work
So
you pinging her this in that direction too.
yeah, and you can see she did chime in this issue a week ago. In the
Yeah.
future, I would love to work on more concrete guidance, so each team does not have to find their own system to determine feature maturity. The quality of the answer should absolutely be considered when maturing to GA, as that is the feature. So I would put 90% of my focus there and 10% on usability and UI.
Yep.
And then she mentioned Spotify Discover weekly playlists. If 9 out of 10 times Spotify gave me a song I didn't like, I'd probably stop using it. At the same time, if I was getting this bad experience, Spotify was also pushing this feature as GA and shouting about it in the product, I'd be really confused. Very
Right.
valid point. So yeah, I appreciated her response here. So ongoing, but then Alana wanted to separate out the UX testing to GA, and this will be done by a scorecard. So this is scoped for 16.5. So I'll be working on this. Specifically, what are the tasks that we feel like should be included in this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess we'll be using a design prototype for this, but of course, like it's also going to factor in the quality of the response. But I guess I can just put a copy paste a response that we feel
Well,
good
I
about,
think that's
so that when
why
it does
she might.
present a good solution, we
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
you're not testing the response, you're testing the usability of being able to find it and use it.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So you should probably lean into a good response. Now, if you're testing the feedback mechanism, then maybe you'd want to put in a bad response. Right.
Right,
So it depends
right.
what you're testing. But because she's recommending this to separate them, which isn't necessarily wrong, I would think that you want to represent the golden path, unless you have a reason not to, because you also want to test the negative flow.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
I think
So I'll be digging
that's strong.
more into that in the next milestone. But that's the plan. That's how we're approaching this, like testing the UX versus testing the quality.
Yeah. Now you could
Because the
technically
UX will be
do them
tested
both.
prototype.
Yeah, you could technically do them both just in separate moments with the same participant. You know, first half is I want to
Yes.
do a task-based study with you. Second half is I want to talk to you about these questions. You know, you could do that too. It's moderated, but you could certainly combine them.
Well, I think, I mean, if we're saying they both strictly have to be done with external participants, I think, I mean, I asked Alana here. Didn't I, or was that in a different thread? Oh, here. Alana mentioned, I was thinking we could ask internal GitLab users for feedback first and open this up to external users if needed. And so I said in this comment from you from above, what are the variables that influence if it's needed? I think it's up to us to determine if we want to include external users here, although I'm not sure if a SEC person could say for sure whether or not the proposed solution worked. I've heard some of our internal SEC experts identify when a proposed fix is not a good solution, but in my research, I got the impression they would try the solution or have their devs try the solution and then would want a confirmation in the subsequent MR that it's not detected again. So this may be, it's going to vary based on how comfortable each person is with that particular kind of vulnerability, right? So, I mean, if we're,
Yeah. And that's a good
because
point too, that
people
the
who have
participant,
evaluated it,
there's
yeah,
two
go ahead.
different sort of participants, I think, right? One is going to know that it's a good or bad answer,
Right,
and that might not be the person. So it also depends on where we're talking about. Right now, this only lives in the vulnerability report. But if we were talking about this on an MR page, then that's a different story because you're talking about a developer who may not know if it's a good or bad answer.
right.
So
And
they're
we
going
are
to probably
adding this,
accept it no matter what.
right, right,
And the
exactly.
AppSec person will be like, no, 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 no. I don't want to let this into my usage unless I can confirm that we're at a 90 percentile. So I can see where you might want to separate these now, thinking about it from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, I mean, it's going to be come down to, you know, careful recruiting as well. Right now, this is only with SaaS vulnerabilities, so we would want people, or do we want people familiar with SaaS type vulnerabilities? And it kind of goes back to that
Two,
conversation we had this morning.
for which research? For the usability side or the
No,
success
for the
quality?
success. Yeah. Because as I said here, I mean, if people aren't familiar with that type of vulnerability or the solution being proposed, they may just want to take the solution that AI is offering them, you know, spin up an MR, merge it, and then hope that it works. But see if it comes up in a subsequent MR. That'll be their determination.
Well, see, now that's an interesting question to ask as a follow-up.
I'm sorry, this is an important call. I need to grab
Yeah.
this.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, can I ping you after and we can continue?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, thanks.
See ya.